So as the cyber environment changes, one of the things that has come about is strong, ubiquitous, cheap encryption. And that's really a game changer. It's good in that it locks down the network so people can't see things, but if you're a defender and you were sitting in the network watching for indicators of compromise and watching things go by, you're far less able to do that surveillance than you used to be with everything encrypted. And 90% of traffic's encrypted on the NIPRNet, and SIPR is moving in that direction as well. So it really drives you to change how you do business. And one of those ways is drives us to the endpoint. I got to get to inside that encryption so that I can see what's going on and gain the kind of situational awareness over what's happening on the network that I need. One of the other things is moving to the cloud. Moving to the eponymous, fuzzy, ubiquitous cloud. What does that mean? The department's still figuring that out as we go, and Congress has helped pushing us in that direction. But the cloud also changes your defensive paradigm, because we want to defend the cloud in the cloud with the cloud. I don't want to pull all that data out. It's hard to get out. It's expensive to get out. So we're working with vendors in the cloud to partner with them to provide defenses. And then last, given I'm driving to the endpoint, I'm out in a bunch of different cloud environments, how do I synchronize that? I need industry to help synchronize all those efforts in a way that creates advantage for the defender. Creates advantage for the defender. Because if you're a student of war, you know that the defender's advantage is knowing the terrain. Of course, as the terrain is crazy complex, that's a challenge. But we need to know our cloud terrain, we need to know our endpoints, and then bring all that data together. One of the themes you're going to hear throughout is talking about security relevant data. Where's the data generated? Who owns it? How's it being manipulated, tracked, and then used for analysis? So we're going to improve our analytic environment over time, leverage our situational awareness of our terrain through multiple techniques, and then partner with cloud service providers. It's hard for the department to compete with trillion-dollar enterprises, so we're going to leverage that. We want to leverage the expertise that they bring to the table to our advantage. Next slide. So in that, what does the agency look like? Agency, obviously, big place. You see 15,000 people spread all across the country, all across the world. Lots of machines, the number of endpoints, the number of machines going up, and the kinds and types every day. And mobility devices, wild, wild west. So while I'm somewhat, pseudo, sort of, kinda comfortable with a laptop, I'm less comfortable with this handheld in my pocket. And industry's been a little less open there, so it's a tougher nut to crack in terms of surveillance, in terms of gaining the kind of situational awareness that you need to defend that particular environment. So the agency has 10 internet access points and a couple cloud access points. You can see that there's lots of blocks, numbers almost too big to fathom sometimes. But in addition to what you see there on the slide, there's a cyber force that the agency has specifically dedicated to the defense of that network. Okay, that force is about 275 contract staff, and then augmented with government civilians spread all around the globe. So about 50 on Ford Island in Hawaii. We have a small presence in Stuttgart, about 100 or so defenders there. And then the center of gravity for cloud is in Columbus, Ohio. And then St. Louis is the continental center of gravity for defensive operations. And those staff do two things. They work at the boundary. In other words, those IAPs we talked about, the cloud access point, which is a boundary for our access to the commercial cloud and the services they provide. But they also do defense. For me as a CSSP, those guys are providing, in those 5 SOCs that I talked about, are providing security services to over 450 mission partners spread all over the globe, from small programs to large agencies. The Defense Contract Management Agency is a partner. They have a global presence. DODIA is a mission partner. They too have a global presence, from schools in Europe and schools in the Far East to some limited schools here in the United States. So a wide variety of mission partners across all security domains. We have mission partners on the NIPRNet, SIPRNet, some in the TS domain. So we're across all those domains providing security services. And certainly a main mission partner are the combatant commands, the geographic combatant commands. EUCOM, AFRICOM, SOUTHCOM, INDOPACOM. We provide security services to all the geographics as a part of our security service program. Right. And amidst all that, we're also running enterprise hunt operations. So as part of the agency's enterprise, both for our mission partners and for the agency itself, we've adopted a program of very deliberate enterprise hunt operations. So when we came to the program a while ago, we had a lot of really good people doing a lot of really good stuff, you know, and Specialist Fountain would come in, and he was cruising a CrowdStrike site the other night, and he saw something cool, and so he would look around for that the next day. And while that initiative is good, it's not the kind of deliberate, disciplined hunt operations that are going to lead us to the kind of success we need against an advanced, persistent threat. And so we've adopted the military decision-making process and a more deliberate process, augmented through the intelligence that the agency has because of our place in the national capital region, along with intelligence we can glean from the combatant commands we support, and have done targeted enterprise hunt operations across that global force. And we've found that to be very successful. And it's baked into the service offering that we provide our people. So when you buy cybersecurity services, CSSP services from the agency, baked into that service is an enterprise hunt set of initiatives that are going to be running. We do that in a couple different flavors, a global enterprise hunt, and then deliberate discovery counter-infiltration activities at individual mission partners. All right, let's go to the next slide. So drive into the endpoint. Again, strong, ubiquitous, inexpensive encryption drives you to the endpoint. The good news for us, while the department has looked at several capabilities over the last several years with the adoption of Microsoft Defender for Endpoint by the department in many respects, we're driving to optimize our interaction with that and get the most value and bang for the buck out of that we can. And we found good things. We've just ran a pilot effort over in US EUCOM, supported by the Army Test and Evaluation Command, ATEC, and found that replacing our organic capability, we were running Windows Event Forwarding teamed up with System Monitor to do kind of I would characterize it as a brute force endpoint monitoring, which was very effective for us. We were able to find red teams and defend EUCOM in a pretty effective way. We found that our experimentation with MDE has accelerated that process pretty significantly. We're able to drive down our labor costs, and most importantly for me is increase our effectiveness. We're finding things in terms of minutes and not hours, minutes and seconds. And that's been pretty useful for us. The visualizations that MDE provides us is good. We were able to do some things in-house, but the professional visualizations from the MDE product family has really been helpful. And then another significant thing is the implementation of live response capabilities. So when you come to me, you say, hey, I'd like some security services and I want you to do the endpoint, we work out the live response. Because I can do a lot of things with that. But you know what? If you had Specialist Fountain and he was just working at the Jiffy Lube 180 days ago, and he decides he spotted something on the CG's computer and he's gonna fix it, that's probably not a good thing. So we come with a set of TTPs and we negotiate with you. Hey, I know I can lock down that computer. I know I can isolate it. I know I can run AV on it. I know I can pull files off of it. Do you want me to do that to Manny's computer? Yeah, you can do anything you want with Manny. He's good, but Pete, don't mess with Pete. He's important. And we work that out ahead of time, and what that allows us to do is allows us, as your 24/7, 365 defender, to then take action when we can. I don't have to call you if I'm doing something on Manny's computer. I can just take care of it for you, and then I'll call you as it's wrapping up as is appropriate. But if it's Pete, I'm gonna call Pete. If it's 2 in the morning, I'm still gonna call you because you said don't mess with Pete. What that allows us to again do is accelerate our defense in ways that are really, really helpful. And I would argue with the move to the endpoint, it really puts us back in the defensive game as we move away from the network layer. But we need help. We need help there. So AMD does a lot of things. We need some help with data tagging because it dumps all its data in ways, and we need ways to do that. As networks flatten and I have a global presence, I got to know where people are. So I spot people. I got to know if they're in Europe. I got to know if they're in San Francisco. I got to know if they're in San Diego. It's tough. And so some of the data tagging and management of that security relevant data that's generated by this new capability requires management techniques that we need help refining. And then also, we talk about the endpoint again. I'm sorta comfortable with laptops. We've been doing those for a long time. Windows laptops, a little less so with Linux laptops, servers. But you know what I'm not as comfortable with is an endpoint called a router or endpoints in the backbone, because those are going to be just as important. As we become super dependent on the network, our adversaries know that and they're going to attack that. And so we've got to come up with creative techniques to expand the definition of endpoint and allow the defender team to stay abreast of that and look for adversaries who are hiding all over the place. You know, it's interesting, people talk about Cold War and hunting and agents, and you think about secret agents like you see on TV, but then think about software agents. Software agents hiding all over the place in the deepest, darkest bowels of the network. That's, my friends, is a difficult challenge. And we need help to figure out how to reach out, surveil those endpoints, because that's what our mission partners are asking for. They want to know that their endpoint's good because, you know, Jimmy Joe Bob's generating stuff on there and he's not real careful about who he's sending it to. But the network that links him to his command and control is equally as important, and we've got to get equally as good at those endpoints as well. Let's go next. All right, so defend the cloud. The department is moving to the cloud with a vengeance because all kinds of good things happen there. It's expandable. It provides us compute power on a level we've never had. It lifts the burden of pretty mundane maintenance off our backs, but also, again, changes the security landscape. What we're doing in support of that as the department's premier CSSP service provider is working with those vendors, the JWCC, the Joint Warfighting Cloud Capability providers in particular. That's AWS, Azure, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and Google Cloud. We're working with those vendors to capitalize on the security services that they already have in place, because they spent a lot of time and a lot of money developing those security services. Now, we're working to create a product there that understands that security relevant data that's generated through their services. So if you're an Azure guy, you know, you have the log analytic workspace and you have Sentinel, and you're feeding that with data connectors, and you pay for that, and you set that up so that the right security data is fed into that and you can work on it. If you're sitting in Azure, it's a little different, or if you're sitting in AWS, it's a little different. Now you have some security services, Security Hub, CloudWatch, CloudTrail, and some others that are dumping data into an analytic environment. they do the same kinds and types of things, but they're labeled differently. The protocols are a little bit different. So it makes it for a challenge to weave those together in a way that allows the department to have a standard level of security service across those vendors. So we've been doing that, and we use MITRE, the MITRE framework, the MITRE cloud framework, as a measuring stick to tell whether we're doing things as well as we might want to be. And we found that to be pretty successful. Use the security relevant tools that are associated with that in each of those vendors, because they just have a little bit different security relevant tools. And then we've woven those together to create a minimum viable defense product that I can provide to combatant commands that are hosting things in the cloud. And we found that to be successful. But what that does is that drives us to at least four different cloud providers, and frankly, quite a number more than that. And that's difficult. The agency is pursuing that, and we're doing that, I think, successfully. However, we need help leveling that playing field across cloud providers to give a common set of security relevant data that we can work with. Because as these numbers grow, and there's well over 100 different mission partners all across those cloud environments, that's going to become untenable. And we've got to come up with creative ways to manage that data. All right. Let's go to the next slide. So one of the ways that you can get after that challenge is through increased automation. I am a fan of the computer that rests in the gray matter between my ears. That's a pretty good computer, and we haven't been figured out how to beat that one yet. Although we can beat him in chess, we can beat him in Go, but we can't beat him in all things. I would challenge that. What we need to do with automation is move that computer in the analyst team that's spread around the globe, move him up the defensive value chain. We got to move him up. Let's lift the burden of looking for artifacts and harvesting artifacts and going and searching for that, PCAP, looking, hey, that PCAP over here. I need automation to do that stuff so I can move him up and focus on the really nefarious things that are going on. I can focus him on the enterprise hunt and developing the kinds of operations to root out those guys that are hiding in the back of the network. So I need my automation to hook the SIMs together. I unfortunately live in a world of multiple security information and event managers. No less than 5 different Splunk instances in the agency, 3 different Elk instances, if you're an Elastic fan, and we won't get into the Coke, Pepsi, Elastic, Elk argument, because we know that you can do great things with both those capabilities, and the agency is. But I have to find ways to automate across that, again, to move my analysts up, to elevate and accelerate their investigative operations. So ways that industry can help us with that will be welcome. Let's go to the next slide. So, industry doing a tremendous amount of good things. My friends out at CrowdStrike and Mandiant and all these places are doing good stuff. But data management continues to be a challenge. They're generating so much stuff that even though I have a pretty robust crew of defenders, I need help managing that in creative ways. So I don't waste my time chasing the wrong bad guy, chasing the wrong thing down a rabbit hole that leads to nothing. I need a disciplined way to manage all that so that I can focus those guys in key places. And I do that through a disciplined process, but so that I can facilitate those enterprise hunt operations across the board. But there's a lot of data out there. Industry's generating a lot of data. Again, I don't want Specialist Fountain surfing CrowdStrike site and then going off and hunting. That's not an effective way to do business. I need a curated intelligence tool that helps sift through that and helps me prioritize that. And I can combine that with the security posture, with what's coming out of AVA's and JFHQ DODIN's SASRI efforts. But I need to combine those two together and then help focus my efforts. So that's an area where we're working. So last slide. Okay. We got a wall. We have to continue to work closer with industry. What I'm finding as you drive to the endpoint and then you go into the cloud, I got to work closer with the mission partner. Both those events drive me to have a more tightly coupled relationship with the mission partner. Because when I'm working on the endpoints, I got to have that live response capability ironed out between us. So again, Specialist Fountain's not shutting off the CG stuff during a conference with the SecDef. So we have to work that out. And when you're in the cloud, what we're doing to accelerate people's adoption and move into the cloud is using infrastructure as code to set that up. So when you choose to go to the cloud, I come with you. And you call me up, and I provide you infrastructure as code that's centrally hosted, and you can leverage that to instantiate those security services we talked about. And we have infrastructure as code in generic format, again, for AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, and Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. I'm going to give you a template, and when you run that template, it stands up the security services that we did all the analysis on. So I get the right security relevant data with the right security relevant tools, and then provides that access to my Cloud Center of Excellence in Columbus. And you don't have to worry about that. So it brings us up, and that allows us to bring mission partners on board in terms of days instead of months. Because before we had to do months as we mapped all that out and moved that data and did the pipeline. We stand that infrastructure up, reach into your environment, and then provide you security services through that infrastructure as code. But we have to work like this with you along the way. And the sooner we can get involved, the better. And then finally, again, we have to continue to automate. We're going to continue to automate to bring all this complexity. Again, the complexity breeds great opportunity, but it also creates opportunity for adversaries. So we have to automate those things. And we're doing, I need AI/ML because, you know, everything tastes better with AI/ML sprinkled on top. Everything tastes better with AI/ML. Trouble is, I need AI/ML I can work with. I don't need a black box. I don't want to be like the Google CEO who on YouTube's the other said, hey, we have some really cool stuff. We don't have any idea how it works. That might be okay for Google, who's got super deep pockets and can make mistakes. When you're working in Department of Defense, where people's lives depend on things being right, you can't afford to have your AI hallucinate on you and make up a solution. I can't unleash an enterprise hunt on a hallucination. So we know that we have to have artificial intelligence to process the volume of security relevant data we have. But we need AI that we can work with, that we have confidence in, and then we can train. Again, that AI helps move my analyst team up the value chain, accelerate and elevate. And and where industry can help us with transparent artificial intelligence capabilities, we're going to embrace that. So we look forward to having you guys in industry help and allow the agency to continue to be the preeminent provider of cybersecurity services across the department. Again, we support over 450 mission partners spread around the globe and continue to innovate along with our partners in PO Cyber who buy us the widgets and the tools to do business. But we're the operators. So, and with that, I will take a few questions, but only a few. You guys are select, man. Yesterday there was a lot of it. There's a whole bunch. You're getting up close and personal treatment today.
Thank you. Jason Cronin from Axiom Consultants. My question is, DISA headquarters is right next to a lot of great resources. What is your relationship from a cyber perspective with a Cybercom or NSA in support of defense of the DODIN?
Some of my best friends work in three-letter agencies. So I'm in the J34, the cybersecurity service provider of the agency. My partner in crime is in the J36. He's current ops. So nobody calls me at 2 in the morning, But they do call Dave at 2 in the morning, and you know what? I like that a lot. I like it a lot. But the good news for you, sir, is Dave's office, which is on the other side of the 6th floor from me, immediately adjacent to him are 2 LNOs from NSA. 2. And he works with those guys like this every day. And so when we do our enterprise hunt operations, they do an equities review with our NSA partners to make sure that we're consistent with those goals. We also tee up our fusion teams with the fusion teams from them to that. We also have a close working relationship with other federal agencies, CISA and the CIA because of the headquarters presence. And Dave leverages that routinely to prosecute operations that we're in. As a current operator, he's involved with those guys all day, every day. Does that answer your question? Sure. Oh, nice. Oh, here we go.
Thank you. I'm Manny Ordonez from Probity Inc. We're curious, with all the vast customer space that you're supporting, is single pane of glass monitoring a fantasy, or is it going to be jumping around amongst hundreds of networks to see what's going on from a cyber CIA and threat perspective?
Okay. In a place far away, in a land of visions and milk and honey, there's a single pane of glass. I'm not going to live to see that. It is never going to happen in my lifetime. I want to reduce that. I want to reduce that down to somewhat lower, but I think the vision of a single pane of glass is just that. It's a vision. Again, I have 5 different Splunk instances that I use all the time. There are others in the agency. 3 different elk stacks across the agency that I work in, and that's going to be my future for a while. And we're working at ways in the agency to collapse that down as is smart, but in some cases it's not smart to collapse it down. You have security domain issues as you move from SIPR to NIPR to higher classifications that are going to keep you in multiple environments. So we don't see a single pane of glass. Now, we're collapsing in those domains. We're collapsing down to where we have fewer panes of glass, and we pull things in out of the internet access points. We pull things from the endpoints, but I'm going to be in Sentinel and Splunk and Elk and others for the foreseeable future. All right. Other questions? All right. I will leave you with some final thoughts. Hey, we've got to get control of our security relevant data. I'm generating the crap out of it in the cloud, and it comes in all different flavors. I've got to get control of that in ways that will allow me, again, to elevate and accelerate my defenders. That data that I got to get control of is the lifeblood of that AI ML that I've told you about. It's dependent. It won't hallucinate if you feed it the right data. If you feed it iffy data, you get iffy results. And so you have to gain control of that. You have to figure out and curate which data you want, how long are you going to hold it, going to keep it in warm, hot, glacial. They're tough decisions, and the president's tried to help us with some executive orders recently on how to do that, and there's some national security memoranda out that talks about that, but we need help managing that data, security relevant data, to success. Automate, automate, automate. Use it as a tool. We've got to get the security orchestration and automated response capabilities to a point where they're value added. Right now, they're so hard to manage as to not be the value added. There's promise, but the complexity is not manageable for us. So we need ways to automate that allow us to drive our workload down again and focus on the right things. Complexity brings great opportunity and great danger at the same time. I can move faster, better, gooder in the network with a software-defined network, but when you say software-defined network, to me, my back immediately starts to itch a little bit. because I'm a network guy for 30 years. I started out in the Army, looking over the Fulda Gap at Russian gun tubes pointed back at me, and I knew the network. I put it up. I put it up from hilltop to hilltop. When you say software defined, that means great complexity, so it's adaptable and agile. It's like lots of code and lots of opportunity for people to get in that code. So we have to manage that in ways, and part of it is gathering the right data and then watching it so you know normal and you know when to look for an anomalous activity. You know, our advantage as defenders is know our terrain. It's the defender's advantage. We have to work together to know both the security relevant data and then that stuff that's in the network that we use every day. If we can combine those two together, we have the inherent advantage. We just have to figure out how to use that and help industry and collaborate with industry to get there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your time and energy for being disciplined enough to stay for the last day. Cool. Thanks.